I have conditioned myself to see any no's, any rejections, any failures as on to the next. Failure doesn't matter to me. I would rather try, because if I get a no and I try to go for what I
Right.
want and I get a no, I'm in the same place as I was before. And if you see a successful person, they're the ones that have failed the most. If you
Yes.
see someone that is not successful, they're the ones that have stayed in their safety net and they haven't branched out, because failure is just something you have to get used to. You have to be okay with conflict and rejection if you want to
Yep.
be a successful human.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I am interviewing an interesting young entrepreneur today. Her name is Mimi Bouchard, and she is a tech CEO and the founder of the modern meditation app called Superhuman. What Mimi and I talked about today was sort of what inspired her she's in her 20s right now. She left home at 18, moved to London by herself, ended up on a reality television show. She has a very interesting life story, but at the core of it is her belief that if you can visualize it and visualize your future self, you can create it. And it might sound like woo-woo, the way that I just said it, but in this interview with her, and I definitely believe in, listen, what we think about, we bring about, there's no doubt. And that doesn't mean every single experience in your life you've had to think about, especially the bad ones. But when we're talking about creating what you want, the power of visualization, and basically that's what this very popular Superhuman app is based on. So I hope that you get inspired by my interview with Mimi Bouchard as much as I was inspired interviewing her. I'm super pumped to welcome Mimi, and is it Bouchard?
Yeah, Bouchard.
Bouchard, to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Terri, for having me. I can't wait to chat.
Well, let's just start from the top. I know you've got a whole backstory, which I want to hear about. And I already said at the top of the show that you're the founder of this modern meditation app called Superhuman. So tell us how you, at such a young age, how you got to sort of creating this app that's very popular, and what inspired you to do it?
Yeah, great question. So Superhuman was really created by a need that I had. And it was a very intuitive, organic creation of this type of meditation that I never thought I would ever make public. But about 8 years ago, I started getting into personal development and my life was changing quickly. I had a pretty tough time, especially in my teens, didn't like myself, had disordered eating, had body image
Mm.
issues, had anxiety and depression, and drank a lot, did a lot of drugs. I was just really not in a good place. And as I inched towards my 20s, I really started getting into personal development. And these books that I was reading were changing my life. And I was doing all the things they were telling me to do, and I was feeling better. But there was one thing that all these books and all these mentors and people were telling me to do that I couldn't stick to, which was
Mhm.
traditional meditation. I don't know why I couldn't stick to it. I guess I always told myself excuses like my brain works too quickly. I'm bored. I just can't stick to it. I'm just not the type of person that can meditate and sit
Yeah.
down in silence. But there was the benefit of visualization in these moments of solitude that I was really lacking. And I decided to create a very unique custom audio type thing for myself on the voice memo app on my phone, just telling myself what my future is going to look like, getting me
Mm.
to envision it in audio form. But I was not listening to these audios with my eyes closed, sitting down cross-legged. I was listening to these audios when I was getting ready in the morning, when I was cooking breakfast, dinner, walking to the gym, on the tube going somewhere. Like I would always kind of just listen to these instead of a podcast, instead of
Mhm.
music, to just get that extra nugget of inspiration, and then also to feel like my future self, because that's really what this work is all about, is embodying your future self energy, the person that you want to become.
Mhm.
And the fundamental belief behind Superhuman is to get what you want in your life, you must first become the kind of person that has it. And
Mm.
before I even realized, the science of all of this, I started seeing these changes in my life radically fast. This was around 5 years ago that I really started doing this. And now I look at my life, I'm listening to this type of audio content weaved throughout my day, not all the time,
Mhm.
once or twice a day. And it's really changing everything. So ultimately, I turned that into a business and I created a meditation app of sorts to have more of this unique content. We have like 16 different categories of meditations on Superhuman, anything you can think of. Our music is different. It's energizing, motivational. There's no silent sitting on that app. It's all just inspiring, motivational, visualization backed content. It conditions you to be who you want to be in these everyday moments. And it's effortless transformation because all you need to do is press play. It doesn't require you to change a behavior or habit or sit down and carve out 20 minutes out of your morning. It just requires you to press play during everyday moments. And it's simple. And now we have helped tens of thousands of women, especially women are our main audience right now, to change their lives over the past year and a half since launching. And the growth has been completely organic up to this point, and it's just been a wild ride. But I'm super grateful, and it's obvious that this was needed in this space. So that's kind of my story.
What I think is great or very interesting about what you're doing and what you tapped into is something that, I mean, listen, those of us in the wellness space and the self-help space, you talk about the secret, you talk about manifesting, you talk about visualizing. Visualizing has always been for me personally, such an important part of creating what I wanted in my life, along with all the work you have to do it and all the other things, And I remember I had a client who was going through chemotherapy. I used to create, I'm also a meditation teacher and do a bunch of stuff. So I used to create audio files for my clients. Like we would do it spontaneously in the session, and then they would take it with them, right? That was long before I had any CDs out or whatever. And this woman was having a really hard time with chemo, was getting super duper sick. It was very heavy duty chemo. And I was like, I wonder if I create basically a future trip audio track where what she experiences is different than what she's been experiencing. How will that impact? Now, it's a roll of a dice when someone's in, she's in a psychologically compromised space because you're dealing with cancer, because you have so much dread of this. Was probably 15 years ago where chemo was just hell. I mean, it still is, but there was no good options. Like you were sick as shit. It was just so bad. Anyway, and so I did this track, and I told her, I said, listen, I can't say, because, I can't control whether she listened to it. Like, there are things out of my control. I said, but are you willing to try? And she said, yes. And it was unbelievable, the difference in her chemo experience. And I kept sort of the phrases, and what I was saying is, you're so surprised at how well you feel. You feel so relaxed. You feel so, but I had her record the horrendous experience from beginning to end. And then I used that to track what would be the future trip track, as I would call it, that would counter that. So it's so interesting to me that you basically, your entire thing is built on this, because that is something that blew my mind when she was like, Terri, it was so much better. I didn't even throw up. And I was like, what?
Our minds are so powerful. And when you visualize something in your mind, your body doesn't really know the difference between real life and imagined reality. So that's a beautiful story. And that's so great that you were able to help her in such a hard time. The power of the mind is it's something that people don't really realize until you just do it. And it doesn't have to be hard. That's my theory too. It really just doesn't have to be hard. Just think differently and just think these new thoughts until it feels normal.
It's like creating your new normal. A lot of what you've accomplished in your life, you've done at a very young age. How do you think, if you would share with us a little bit about your childhood, how you grew up, because something motivated you at such a young age to do what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So growing up, I'm very blessed to say that my parents loved me so much, my sister, and they were great, great parents. And they did their absolute best with what they had at the time. We had a very pure, wholesome upbringing. The only thing that I can really remember when it comes to a big negative growing up, well, there are a few things. One, I never really felt like I fully fit in. I don't know why. I was always kind of the weird kid growing up that I didn't feel, it didn't feel natural for me to be in the place I was and to just even the country. Like I never felt like I was meant to be in Canada for some reason. And now I haven't lived there since I was 18, almost a decade ago. But I always felt like I was just a bit different. That was one thing. The other thing is that my parents as amazing as they were and as amazing as my childhood really was, they never had a lot of money. And I think that was a big thing for me that motivated me to create my own businesses and to become an entrepreneur and to really take my future wealth into my own hands. That was one thing I had a lot of shame about at a young age, when I started to realize, oh, our house is a lot smaller, or, oh, like I have a lot of, hand-me-down clothing and we go shopping at Goodwill. That being said, we never struggled to eat. We were definitely we were middle class, but my parents were also, very mindful about what they spent money on, and they would argue about money and not just we weren't in poverty, but we just weren't abundant at all. And there was
Right.
always tension around the topic of money. So that was a big thing for me that motivated me to become a business person. And before Superhuman, I had countless other things that I had started and was involved in. And I think that's why at such a young age, I now own this huge tech company. And it's because I failed a lot before coming to this point. This is not my first business, and I'm very relentless when it comes to business, especially for me, is just who I am. It's part of my self-image that I've actually always had, is that I'm a hard worker and I'm meant for big things in this world. And I'm meant to earn a lot of money and to have financial abundance, because that gives me security for my future. I don't want to worry, and I want my parents and my family to not worry. And that's my biggest motivator. So I think that growing up had a big imprint on me.
Yeah.
And going into my early teens, I had extreme self-consciousness. So maybe society's beauty standards, or the people that I knew, or me just never feeling good enough. I'm not sure what the cause was, but I didn't feel beautiful at all. And I struggled a lot with that. And I had some very hard times in my teens because of body image and, how I felt about myself, those types of issues. I tried getting professional help at times in my teens, and my mom, tried to get me to go to a therapist, and, it was so much money for them at the time to send me to a $65 an hour therapist, like a really, cheap one. And I felt so much guilt for that. So I stopped going. And, it was just, for me, I healed myself. And I'm not going to say that that works for everyone. I have help now, I have coaches and therapists that I talk to. But for me, doing this work was what ultimately brought me to where I am today, where I don't have those issues anymore and I'm far from it. And I've created an amazing life in every single bucket of my life, from my relationships to my health, to my personal development and mindset, to my wealth and career and abundance, to my friends and, everything in my life. I feel abundant. And I know it's because of this work. So long answer to your question, but I will just add one more thing that I always like to tell people, because looking back, I always thought it was a linear journey. It's not a linear journey. You're going to have so many ups and downs. I had so many ups in my early 20s, and I had downs in my, when I was 21, 22, and then I went back up, and then you fail. And then it's a messy process. But then when you get to the end point of being this fulfilled, happy person, you look back and realize it was just so worth it.
Yes. And you've been very creative in your career and your endeavors and sort of doing what you need to do. So would you tell us a little bit about reality TV?
Yeah. So when I was 19, I moved to London, and I had a 2 year.
Can I ask you why
Yeah.
London?
I don't know. It was the farthest away place I could think of that spoke English.
Great.
I had saved up money that summer. I went to university for a semester and dropped out and started an online magazine, and, young and ambitious and naive, wanting to just move across the country. So for a couple months before moving, I saved up money and worked at a bar, and I got to London, and obviously was needing to get a job right away because it's super expensive there. So I was working a lot of odd jobs as I was making my online magazine work, dog walking, babysitting, working at a juice bar, all that kind of good stuff. And at that point, I was financially the most stressed I've ever been, but also my dreams were so big that I was just ready to do whatever it took. So I was working really hard to meet new people. I was reading a lot of personal growth books at the time. One of the principles and one of the books said, your network is your net worth. So I was like, okay, I need to meet a lot of people. So I'm cold messaging hundreds of people At that time, I was doing videos for the online magazine on YouTube, and I loved being on video. I loved talking to the camera, I realized. So I thought to myself, okay, I have a year left on this visa for London. I
Mhm.
want to get sponsored by a company to stay here. And I like TV and like camera stuff. So I guess I'm going to become a TV presenter and I want to do that. So I started trying to meet people in this industry. And ultimately, I met my old agent who said to me, "You're not going to get a visa this way. It's a very hard industry to get into in the UK, especially because you don't have a British accent.
Right.
But if you get onto this TV show, this reality show made in Chelsea, then I'll represent you right away. They'll get you a visa and you'll be good." So I thought to myself, all right, well, this is not something I would ever have considered in the past. I never even
Yeah.
watched reality TV. I don't like reality TV, to be honest. And it's not something that I really have ever like identified myself with,
Right.
but I was hungry and ready to do whatever it took. So I said, you know what? Great, let's do it. So this was like 7 years ago. It
Mhm.
feels like forever ago, but yeah, I went on this show to get a visa. Ultimately, I was on the show for a year or two. It was an interesting experience. I wasn't really a main character. So, maybe for a moment or two, but it grew me up faster. I was very naive, and producers, and especially in reality TV, they can be very manipulative. So I had to learn a
Mhm.
lot quickly, and it was just a great life experience. And then I pivoted again. And, after that, wanted to create a TV show. So I went, for years, worked on creating a TV show that ended up having basically almost been sold to E in the US, which is like the biggest network here. But last minute, one of the main cast members pulled out and it failed. But I've had so many crazy failures like that. But yeah, and then the TV industry led me into doing more social media stuff. And then I launched courses and online subscription platforms, which then brought me this audience of health and wellness and personal growth, which led me to my podcast, which led me to Superhuman. So really looking back, it's like, everything had to happen exactly as it did, you know?
So what do you think about the importance of quote unquote failing?
Oh, you don't get success without it. It's not even a question. I don't see it as a bad thing. I have conditioned myself to see any no's, any rejections, any failures as all right, next. That wasn't like on to the next. For me, it's not something I dwell on. Of course, if I worked on something for so long, like that TV show for 2 whole years, it was devastating at first. And I did everything I
Mhm.
could. And sometimes you think you're manifesting something, but then the universe has a greater plan for you. So it doesn't
Yep.
work out the way that you thought you wanted to. And the other thing I've realized is that you can't get it in the timeline that you want. It's funny because now that TV show is resurfacing now, which I won't talk too much about. The timeline of things they never work the way you want them to. But the end goal of the energy of the selection of what you desire in your life, abundance, that's a very general term,
Mhm.
that you will get if you do the right work when it comes to, adjusting your self-image to match it and to create that ultimate life through your energy and your actions. Right. So yeah, failure for me is next. It doesn't matter to me. I would rather try because I'm in the same place. If I get a no and I try to go for what I
Right.
want and I get a no, I'm in the same place as I was before.
Yep.
And if you see a successful person, they're the ones that have failed the most. If you
Yes.
see someone that is not successful, they're the ones that have stayed in their safety net and they haven't branched out because failure is just something you have to get used to. You have to be okay with conflict and rejection if you want to
Yep.
be a successful human.
It's so true. And I think that I like the idea of sort of framing it, because in my own life, I also think about quote unquote failure is just trying. Sometimes you try new things and then I realize I don't like them, or I thought it was going to feel
Yeah.
this way and it doesn't. So if I stop doing them, am I a failure? Of course not. I feel like everyone has multiple careers in them.
Mm.
Does that mean my first career as a talent agent was the wrong career? No, it just means it was right for then. And then I outgrew it. And then something else needed to be right. So I think being fluid and what you're describing of like, people do stay in this feeling of safety. And especially if you suffer from perfectionism and trying to control all the things, then you're not going to want to step out of your comfort zone, right? Because you're only going to want to do things that you're good at. And every change that I made, every big change, required me to really look at that perfectionistic side and say, you're going to do this new thing. And in the beginning, you're probably going to suck at it. Like you never wrote a book. You don't know how to write a book. You're going to learn how to write a book by writing a book. Trust me.
Yeah.
But of course, failure is an option when you try new things. But I think the reframe of like, this is an experience, like how blessed are we that we get to have them where we can pivot in life. So I wanted to ask you, since you have this app and you have all these people that you're sort of guiding through having a more self-determined, a more self-reflective, a more, and kind of a more Zen life too. So for your own process, do you have a daily practice, a morning practice? Like what does your actual life look like as you live these principles?
Yeah. Years ago, I had more of a strict regimen, but as the time has passed and I learned more about myself, I realize I'm just a very intuitive person and I'm sometimes a little bit all over the place, but using that to my advantage and as a strength, I don't allow myself anymore to try to create a perfect routine that I stick to every single day. It works for some people, but for me individually, I just know that I'm a rule breaker and I'm just not going to want to do it or do it a different way. My routine every day looks different now, but the constant is I do listen to one of our meditations every day, whether it's getting ready in the morning, listening to a 6-minute getting ready before a long day, getting ready meditation while I'm like doing my makeup quickly or something. I love going on long walks and I love being in nature. So doing our walking meditations, I'll just do one of those little things a day. And it's easy because I also approve all the meditations that go out after they've been mixed and mastered and polished by our audio engineers. So sometimes I'll listen to unreleased ones. That's definitely something I like to weave into my day because it just resets the tone. Number one. Number two, I do like to wake up early, and a non-negotiable that I have now, which has been really hard for me in the past, and I go in and out of it, is just not checking my phone when I wake up. Maybe checking to see if I have any urgent messages immediately on text. Sure, I'm a business owner. I have to do that sometimes, but I mean, I don't open up my Instagram. I don't open up social media. I actually had deleted Instagram off my phone 10 days ago and I haven't re-downloaded it yet because it distracts me. And I'm a business owner and I can't be distracted right now. I have so much going on. I'm actually writing a book. Right now, I'm relaunching my podcast with a whole new big team on my personal branding side. I own a big business where we're hiring a lot of people every month. I'm onboarding someone right now. I've been onboarding someone else, 3 weeks ago. That takes so much time and effort. I'm a busy person. I'm in a relationship. I need to give my personal life love as well. So that being said, I'm super busy. And I think our content is great for that. I love to journal, and this is something that's free that anyone can do. I love to put pen to paper. I love to just plan out my day in the morning. I'm a big writer when it comes to journaling, keeping tabs on my mental state. And then generally their healthy habit I do every day, not in the same way, but I eat healthy. And it's not hard for me because I see myself as the kind of person that eats healthy and enjoys healthy food. It's all about my self-image, right? So, I enjoy that and it helps me thrive and it makes me feel good. And I also know my limits. I've been on calls all day today. Like I've had 8 calls today with my team. And it's 3:30 p.m. And I've realized, okay, maybe I don't do as many calls tomorrow because I need a bit more time to think and not do anything and be that visionary creative business owner and not be distracted all the time. I think distraction kills us. Like it really kills our creativity. It kills, our potential. And so after this, I'm going to turn off my computer or my phone and tell my team, hey guys, I'm not available for an hour and I'm just going to go outside and go on a walk and move my body. So just really intuitively choosing how my day is going to look and working with what I have too. Those 8 calls I couldn't have rescheduled today. We've had a really crazy time at work and there's a lot of things that are urgent coming up, but that's okay. I'm now not going to allow that to ruin my day because in the past I would have let that, but now I'm really setting those boundaries when it comes to now after this, I'm allocating an hour time and that's it. So I hope that was a decent answer. I know some people want a whole morning routine list. I used to do that, but I felt I was being too harsh on myself and I wanted to tap into my feminine intuitive side a bit more and it's worked really well for me.
I think that the intuitive stuff that you're talking about is really valuable to honor, like to actually be like, how do I feel? Like the act of checking in and self-reflecting and then doing the thing that feels. I have a lot of friends who are intuitive, medical people and intuitive eating coaches and those types of things where it's a whole business, a whole brand, the whole psychology is
Mhm.
based on your intuition and how important it is. And I do think that there's something to be said if you have such a strict regimen that doesn't feel aligned, right? We're checking a box, but whose box,
Mhm.
right? It's a box that someone else who's a meditation person thinks that you should check. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about, or just highlight maybe, that I think is really profound and important with the work that you're doing and the difference of what is happening on Superhuman in understanding how incredibly important our self-image is. And I love the way that you talk about the process of listening to, the future stuff and being able to embody, see, and feel yourself as someone who can accept abundance, as someone who can create abundance, right? The way that you're talking about it. And I wonder what you guys who are listening, that have you ever really thought about it from this point of view where, of course, I've done shows on self-esteem and self-image and all this stuff, but this is
Yeah.
very specific.
Yeah.
Mimi, what we're talking about right now is very specific,
Yeah.
that there's a direct correlation between what you allow or attract in your life to how you think and view yourself. So I wanted to just ask you, how did that particular concept, that in particular, because really we're talking about what makes what you have and what you're
Yeah.
doing different. The visualization aspect, it's not, I mean, listen, obviously you didn't create visualization. There's
No.
a book called Visual, 1972. Like, we know this, but how you're bringing it to modern
Yeah.
culture, making it accessible now. So what actually inspired that piece of it for you, if you can
It's a
even
great
remember?
question. Yeah, no, Terry, that's a great question. And all of this has been spoken about in different ways. And I think the beauty of different people writing different books, different people having different podcasts, and the way that they explain certain things might hit one person really, really strongly. It's the way that things are said and the way that things are explained, and the concepts remain quite similar when it comes to this work. My first interaction with the concept of self-image psychology and that creating your life is through a book that my grandfather told me to read called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And Maxwell Maltz, this was written in the 60s. It was written years and years ago, and it's not even popular anymore. It should be, but it's written in an older way and it's really powerful. So this created this interest for me when it comes to this work, and everything else that I learned through other teachers when it comes to visualization, when it comes to modern manifestation and energetics and whatever, you want
Mhm.
to call it. This made sense to me as the core thing that creates your life, and not enough people talk about it. And there aren't even that many books on self-image psychology. I'm writing one
Mhm.
right now about it, so hopefully there'll be one that's a bit more modern for people to read soon. But the concept is that your self-image creates your life. The words that you put at the end of the sentence, I am the kind of person that dot dot dot,
Mm.
dictates everything in your life. And of course, those books like Atomic Habits, amazing book, so incredibly well written. I love
Mhm.
that book. But I would actually disagree and say that habits do not create your life. Your self image is at the top of the food chain here, because when you change your self image, you naturally, effortlessly change your habits, you naturally, effortlessly change your actions,
Mhm.
your beliefs, the way you speak, your opinions, everything about you, because it comes from who you believe that you are. And I'll give a very, very simple example here. If you, for example, want to get into running, okay, and you don't see yourself as a runner,
Mhm.
it's going to be very, 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 very hard for you to get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and put on your running shoes and go on a
Uh-huh.
run. But
Yeah.
if you see yourself as a runner and you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just who I am, what I do, even if it's the rainiest, coldest morning, it's just one of those things you do because it's who you are.
Right.
I'm the
Because
kind
you're
of
a
person.
runner.
Yeah, because you're a runner.
Right.
I know that I'm the kind of person. I've conditioned myself to, I've created my future self and I live as her every day. Future self,
Mm,
it's a misconception that it's not, you can't be that person now. It is who you
mhm.
are. It's your ultimate self. I use those words synonymously, your higher self, but I'm my future self all the time now because I believe at the core that I am an abundant person. I'm an amazing business person.
Mhm.
I'm a lucky person. Good things always
Mhm.
happen to me.
Yep.
I see opportunity everywhere. I live an amazing life that is full of awe and wonder. I have an amazing relationship with my partner. All of these beliefs that I have, like it's just who I am. I eat healthy. It's weird for me to not have this clear feeling inside of me. It's not me, right?
Right.
So that's why I've created this life because it's just this like invisible force, your self image. No one can see, but it is
Driving.
what it is. It drives everything. So
Right.
that was the book that initially got me into it. And now, as I'm writing my first book and I'm reading so much science behind it
Mhm.
and all these things I want to include, it's just like it's more and more the make or break to anyone's dream life, success, any
Right.
desire that they have.
Well, that is, so that's a perfect place to end. So
Yeah.
tell us where we can find you and where people can get Superhuman.
Great. You guys can find me on Instagram if I'm there. Right now, it's not on my phone, but it's just Mimi Bouchard, my name. My podcast, it's just called Mimi. We have over 350 episodes and we're relaunching it with a new production team. It's going to be
Ooh,
just epic. And that'll be in the next month. And that's just Mimi on the podcast app. And that's pretty much where you can find me in Superhuman if you want to try it out. We have a 14-day, 2-week free trial that you
great.
guys can take advantage of, and it's risk free. We have like a money back guarantee. So even if you forget to cancel, you're all good. But yeah, try it out. And everything we were just talking about when it comes to self image is implemented into that app. So it helps you reprogram your self image. That's essentially what we do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I super appreciate it.
Thank you, Terri. It was so nice to meet you.
You too.